Welcome to Help, I Have Kids. I'm your host, Pam Marshall, a mom of 5 and a pediatric occupational therapist with over 35 years experience. This podcast is designed to equip you with practical tools, insights from experts, and real life stories. Because at the end of the day, you are the head of your child's care team. Each week, you'll hear from pediatric experts and fellow moms like you that will help build your confidence. They'll offer clarity and empower you to make informed decisions that work for your whole family.
All right, welcome to the Help I Have Kids podcast. I'm different this time. This is not Pam. We're flipping the script. I am Meredith, and I'm a first-time expectant mom, and I'm asking Pam, as a seasoned mom and pediatric therapist of over 35 years, just all of the burning questions I've had that I've spiraled at midnight about and looked in moms groups for and just not had the courage to ask about. So I'm going to dig into her wisdom, and I can't wait to pick your brain.
I'm so ready.
Awesome. So I'm going to start off the podcast just how you start off the podcast. What is the best piece of advice you've ever gotten as a mom?
Well, I love this question because I remember it like yesterday. I remember a mom, actually she was a grandma age, a woman in my church who I talked to, and she challenged me. She didn't use the word present. I think we use that right now. That's kind of been a buzzword probably the last 10 years for moms to be present, like present in the moment, present with your children. But that's what she was talking about. It was being present. She was challenging me to not miss the moments. Like a lot of times moms can have thoughts in their head like, oh, I wish they were sitting up, or I wish they weren't crying so much. I wish they were sleeping through the night, or whatever it is. I wish my child didn't have such bad behavior and we could just get through a day without that. You know, instead of having those types of thoughts, really embracing the challenge of motherhood, the joys, the sorrows, the hard times, the good times, and just being present in the moment, like whether it's good or challenging or happy or sad or frustrating. You know, we've been entrusted with the gift of children, and, you know, my faith in God plays into how I am as a mother. And I believe all children, no matter their gifts or abilities or lack of abilities, you know, children that have special needs, they're all such a gift, and we are entrusted with them. And so don't miss the moments, like just be present.
That's good advice. I remember you also gave me some advice about a hairdryer.
Oh, yes.
So you want to impart that advice as well?
I can share that really quick. So actually, my friend Helen, who lives here in the area, I was babysitting for her children when I was in college in OT school. And she was a young mom and used a blow dryer to change diapers, like on a newborn baby, and the babies just calm so beautifully. You know, when you give newborns baths, there are very few newborns who like a bath, and usually they're screaming the whole time you're trying to dry them off and get them dressed and get their diaper on, and it's just kind of a traumatic time because you're a new mom, you have all these emotions, and your baby's just screaming bloody murder, it feels like. And so she taught me that with a blow dryer, and they just don't cry, and their little face like lights up, and they love it. They are all warm and snuggly. Now, of course, you have to have a setting where you don't burn your newborn baby, that you have settings on that blow dryer. But we used a little teacup hook and always kept a blow dryer by our changing table with all 5 of our kids. And we would blow dry them. I mean, they were 2 and 3 and still loving it. Like, can you blow dry me after my bath? And maybe not so good because we had one that even in high school would have to make sure his body was 100% dry before getting dressed. We used to tease him about it. Maybe it was that blow dry thing, but it really was a great strategy to get them dry and lotioned up and redressed without crying.
I love that. I love that piece of advice. It's so funny and just lighthearted, and Yeah. Just some fun moments with your kids.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to jump right in. What are some things I should be researching and reading about before baby gets here so that I'm prepared and not caught off guard?
Yeah, that is a great question. I do have to brag on you, Meredith, for being such a young mama. You are calm and peaceful. You've been faced with challenges and you just are going through that beautifully, and just really proud of you for that.
Thank you.
What helped me, back in our mom era, there was no internet. So we had books, and the most famous was What to Expect When You're Expecting and What to Expect Your First Year of Life. And I think I usually tell new moms that you want to research a little ahead. You don't need to be too far ahead because it's just overwhelming, all the information. When you're expecting, part of it is just enjoying the journey of being pregnant and knowing what's happening during those stages. And then your last trimester, of course, you're getting ready for baby. You're starting to nest. You're starting to really think about, oh my word, I have to go through labor. Like that is an overwhelming thought. But just preparing, some people like to take classes, some don't. Some people want to read. Getting around other moms is always great, and other newborn babies. I highly recommend for those moms out there expecting and you've not been around little babies and you're a little nervous about how to handle them or how to change a diaper, try to find some friends, that maybe have a newborn baby or family members that you could get around and spend some time with. We always liked borrowing children and then giving them back before we had our own. That was fun. But I think another good way is if you do belong to a church or church community, you can volunteer in the nursery. That's a great place to be around babies and get your comfort level up before holding that newborn of your own.
Yeah, that's really good. I feel like there's so much information out there. And whenever I first found out that I was pregnant, I was researching, I'm still researching. We'll talk about it here in a second, but just like, how are they going to go from like their solids? And then I just like kind of overwhelmed myself with the information that I probably won't need to look up until, she's here and I get to know her. And
that is absolutely right.
I probably should be looking at, breastfeeding and, the things that she will probably need for the immediate first few months.
And going back to my answer about being present is fear. Fear can rob a mom of so many moments. Fear can rob you of your pregnancy. I worked in a high-level NICU with my first pregnancy, and I really had to separate and take control of my thoughts and not go down the road of fear. Because when you work in, a children's hospital NICU, you see the worst of the worst, and you see all the things that could go wrong, and it's right in front of you all the time. And so you just have to choose to not go down that road, not have fearful thoughts, stop yourself. And there's no guarantee any of us will have a healthy baby, no guarantee any of us will have a living baby. I mean, as hard of a truth that is. So we really have to surrender that control. I think it's our need to want to control as mom starts in pregnancy even, that we really actually have no control over any of it.
Yeah. I mean, I remember my doctor in the beginning, I was like, what can I do to make this baby healthy? And she was like, just don't drink alcohol, don't do tobacco, try to eat healthy, but, you could lay down and be fine. Like just your baby's going to be fine. She's going to grow and she's going to be healthy. And you have no control over that.
You really don't. And whatever you've done before you were pregnant, you want to continue. You don't want to start exercising, for example, if you've not been exercising. You might be able to walk or pick up maybe some of your activity. But what I mean is you wouldn't want to be newly pregnant and get on a treadmill. That may not be the smartest thing, that you want to maintain your activity or your lifestyle, or you can always improve your eating, right? That's a good thing when you're pregnant, but knowing your body and continuing the rhythms that you've been doing are a good idea.
So one thing I've been Googling since the beginning, and I don't know why I was so hung up on this, is the pacifier. What kind of pacifier to use? There's so many. There's the ones that look like the nipple. There's the orthodontic ones. And, dentists recommend the orthodontic ones that are flatter, and therapists and lactation consultants recommend the more round one that looks like nipple, and then there's like ones that are more like triangle shaped, and so there's just so many out there, and I found that to be one of the biggest things that I was worried about whenever I was putting together my registry. But as a feeding therapist, and you kind of know the oral development of a baby and what that leads into.
I love this topic, actually.
I would love to pick your brain about it.
Yes, I love it because it's, again, another one of those things that's unknown. And the best way to handle it is to have maybe an array of 4 or 5 different pacifiers available in your bag that you're taking to the hospital. Because first of all, you have no idea what your baby's palate is going to be like, what the shape of their mouth is, what they prefer. All babies have preferences. And there may be one pacifier you try and they do not like it, and they have a strong preference, and then you try another one. And the truth is, if you have a baby that is typical, and this can go against, this is one of those things where some people will give you advice and they'll say, don't use a pacifier at all. And other people will say, it's okay. I'm a firm believer, after many, many years of doing feeding intervention and having my own children, breastfeeding and that journey, mostly it's okay for kids to have pacifiers. If you have a child who has a lot of feeding difficulties, and maybe they have some developmental concerns or special feeding, they're really what we call a problem feeder, that's a different child. And that, experts should help you through that journey if your child does have feeding problems. So I think, taking a deep breath on the pacifier and just knowing that some babies come out sucking their fingers, and you don't really know if your baby's going to be a finger sucker, that sometimes you can't take the fingers away. Like, they will not let you. They don't want a pacifier and they're going to say no to a pacifier, and they want those fingers. And then other babies don't want a pacifier at all. And then some babies take to it, but they want a particular one. So I think this is another one of those really important pieces of information that we're talking about. You don't have control, is be flexible, in the whole journey with feeding, with everything with your baby, is being flexible. Don't be rigid in your approach, because, if you have a rigid thought like, we are not using pacifiers, you don't exactly know what the personality of your baby is. You don't know if that pacifier will help soothe your baby and bring comfort to them. As babies journey and get older, pacifiers become a parent problem. That it's really, I had a great pediatrician that was like the top resident at the children's hospital I worked at. And nurses just flocked to that person when they opened their doors of a private practice, because he was so good. And, he would say, babies past 6 months, they don't need a pacifier. We just give it to them because it keeps them quiet. It's for us. It's for the mom or for the parent. It's really not for the baby. And so I thought that was very interesting. And what we chose to do, again, this is a personal choice of everyone. I actually pushed the pacifier because I knew we could cut it and get rid of it, and it wouldn't impact speech and, dental health later. And so that's what we did. And we kept it in the bed at 6 months on. We just kept it in the bed, and only for sleeping. And then we cut it. So by their first birthday, they were completely done with the pacifier. But that, again, that was our choice. And it was what I knew about development, but what I also knew to be okay for the child. So just be flexible. Have some choices when you go to the hospital in your bag. And the hospital also sometimes they have choices there. And so just let it be one of those things that you can wait and see.
Yeah, that's really good. My mom, I haven't had braces, and I have pretty straight teeth. And so I remember calling my mom and saying, like, what did you use for me? And she's like, you had a pacifier since you were 3, because you were the third child, and we just needed something to keep you quiet.
Right.
And like, my teeth turned out fine. My speech turned out fine. I didn't have to go to speech therapy. But then then you see other people who are like, No, you
Right.
need to cut it off at 6 months. And so, I
And
guess, yeah.
really a lot depends on your mouth and how the size and the shape of your mouth, and some of that stuff is hereditary. So I think it's not a one size fit all answer. It's not a flat answer that everyone should apply it. Now, some dentists or some oral-facial myologists may have a different opinion, but based on what I've seen, it's really okay for a healthy baby to have a pacifier if you choose that.
That's good. Yeah.
Mhm.
You're scrolling as a new mom, especially now, you're scrolling and the first thing you see is someone saying,
No pacifier.
don't
Yeah.
use a pacifier, or
Yeah.
only use this type of pacifier.
Right.
And so
Right.
it's just, you put so much pressure on yourself to find which one do I put on the
Yeah.
registry? Which one do I
Right.
only give my kid? I don't want to expose them to one that's going to be bad.
And it's a great controversy, especially in the therapy world, of is there nipple confusion or is there not nipple confusion? And again, it goes back to healthy newborn, no problems, versus a child who is a problem feeder, and maybe a problem feeder for various reasons. Sometimes you can have different approaches for what's going on with that baby, but it's so individual to the baby and the mom's goals, what they want. So
definitely. So going into, just because you were a feeding therapist, especially in a NICU, I'm interested in hearing just like what the process is of, you go from breastfeeding to giving them purees, and then maybe baby-led weaning. And that's always kind of a controversy too, is do you do baby-led weaning and give them solids, or do you give them purees? And, everybody kind of has their approach.
They do.
And
They
their opinions
absolutely
too.
do. And what I found is most babies who breastfeed, they really don't want food or solids till much later than bottle feeding babies. And also, we have a really sharp baby marketing campaign, or many of them going on in the U.S. These companies that produce the baby food and baby juice and baby, all the things for baby, they're pushing their products. Of course, they want you to think that you should start feeding your baby XYZ at 4 months old or 5 months old. But most babies don't need it. They really don't. Most babies are fine till later. And the whole introduction of solids, it swung different, up and down, like, don't do this, now do this, now do that, and they found that eliminating a lot of things increased allergy reactions. So now we're back to introducing, things at an earlier age or within a shorter time period, like peanut butter is one of them, that we're back to making sure children get. And honey is always something where no, because of what's in honey. You don't want to give your child honey, but following your pediatrician's recommendations is also a good idea. I disagree with the food pouches. So all the pureed food in a pouch, that again is a marketing gimmick. It's meant to help and be convenient, and for our lifestyle, just hand your kid a pouch. But what we found in the therapy world, many times when children come in, there's so much oral development that happens in that first year. And as babies are beginning to manipulate food in their mouth and learn, where it goes and placement of it, is that the tendency, if people give their children pouches, the tendency is that's all they're getting. And they're not spending time in their high chair and spending time with little pieces of food and picking them up and chewing, learning to manipulate that food from side to side, getting it all over their mouth, licking. They're not getting the same experience as sitting in a high chair. And I think it's more convenient. Like, it's a pain to have your child messy from head to toe when they eat and are learning to eat. It's a very messy thing. But if you can build that into your schedule, like meaning give them the messy things right before you're going to give them a bath. Just go ahead and make that part of part of the day. And even if your bath is just a quick bath, we don't necessarily want to do long, soaped up baths every day, but maybe your bath is just fun of getting in the water. Like maybe you're not going to use any soap, but maybe you just do the quick bath because they like it. Kids love water and it's a fun routine. It's part of bedtime. So, trying to build things in your routine that makes sense. But I think, remember, there is a marketing game out there. Babies don't need juice. There's really no purpose for juice. But it's marketed so heavily. And when you come home from the hospital, you have a bag with all these coupons and all this stuff in it. And it makes you feel like, oh, I need to go buy juice. Oh, I need to go buy these pouches. I need to go buy this stuff. When really you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I really like that. Just being more intentional about your time. And as a first-time mom going from, I'm 23, so kind of going into the phase of, or coming from the phase of hanging out with my friends all the time and, go with school and work and everything. And then I think you bring up a really good point of just slowing down your life that I needed to hear as a mom or as an upcoming mom. Your life is going to change, and those intentionality of, you can't have a 2-minute meal like I can now. I can go downstairs and eat really quick and out the door. But I have to slow down my life a little bit and say like, oh, well, the spending time with my kid, that's a personal connection, but then it's also, they need to have time to explore and be in the bathtub. And so instead of having the 2-minute bath routine.
And you bring up a good point, eating as a family, like when you're expecting, as you and your husband are right now, it's the time to talk about what values do we want for our family, because it starts when your baby's born. It doesn't start when they're 5. You want to create those habits now, because mealtime should be social. It should be part of a connection as a family. And every family does that differently, but there's value in it. And if you choose it, having your baby present with you while you and your husband eat a mealtime. So then when they are, even when they're just in a bouncer, or maybe you're holding them, you're getting them in your mealtime routine. And then that's an easy transition when it's time for them to sit and have purees or, begin to try food. Create it as part of the meal rather than, oh, I'm going to feed the baby first and then we're going to try to eat later. Or it really is great just to build mealtime. So I highly encourage that, like even as a young infant, just have mealtime. And as soon as they can sit up, they can go in the high chair, independently.
Well, people say like, they can hear you in the womb. So, if they can hear you in the womb, I'm sure whenever they're out, they can hear you and they understand what's going on. And you just want to build that. So that's great advice.
Mm-hmm.
As a first-time mom who may go back to work, what are some realistic ways I can support development in those busy days? I think one of the things that I was worried about, probably because my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my husband is in pharmacy school right now, so it's not an option really for me to be a stay-at-home mom. That's one of the worries that you go, like, I'll only have like 2 hours with my kid after work. And, but you're leaving them with either a daycare or a grandparent or a trusted friend. And, how do you still focus on doing all the things that are good for their development and, like kind of losing that control, I guess, that you feel like you should have as a mom?
Well, it can start with asking a lot of questions. So as you're discerning, who's going to watch the baby, whether it be, a family member or a daycare, asking questions about their routine. Where do they put the babies? Like, where do they go during their awake time? And early on, they're not awake a lot of the time, but, by 4 months, they're pretty awake. They're getting more awake and spending longer awake times. And the thing that I have seen that has negatively impacted development the most is when babies spend a lot of time in plastic containers. And a plastic container is anything that has the base as plastic. So like our car seats are plastic, and they put, a covering over them. But babies should not spend a long amount of time in a car seat. And one very good rule to have, although it's challenging because your baby often falls asleep in a car seat, you want to just leave them there until they wake up because you don't want to disturb them. If you can, from the time they're newborn, if they're used to getting moved in and out of that car seat, they might not wake up as easily, is don't leave them in the car seat. Just get them out and put them in the bassinet or put them where they normally sleep so they're not spending those hours in that plastic container sleeping. Also, the little, we used to, years ago, only have swings that had plastic base to it, but now there's all the little rocking, automatic rocker type things that some people are putting their babies in all night long to sleep. Just because they want sleep. They think, oh, I'll just keep them in this. But it is not a good thing. That if you can at all, it's understandable for babies that have special needs or are medically fragile or something's going on. Maybe that's a completely different story. But overall, it's best for your baby to be, lying down and know what bed is versus upright. And using the soft bouncers that just have like a metal frame and there's just cloth in them, that's really good for young babies during the day to spend time there. And of course, wearing your baby is good. So you want to ask those questions to your caregivers. Do you ever wear babies? Do you, ask the questions, where are they? Do you put them on their tummies? And if so, how long? Because development should be all throughout the day. It shouldn't be that 2 hours you get home in the evening for a working mom. It really should be all throughout the day, little bits and little spurts throughout the day. That's really how babies develop the best. So asking a lot of questions about the routines and where babies spend their time while you're gone. And then, of course, at night, you do want to set their schedule up so they're awake when you're awake. If that means that they don't put them down for a late nap, at daycare or at the sitter's house, you want them awake for that time that you have with them, and you want to do all the bedtime routine. That's such a fun, bonding, connecting time. And reading. You can read to your baby when they're a newborn.
Yeah, that's
You can
good.
read to them.
I think just like I didn't know that you could really organize your child's sleep routine.
You can.
And make it to where they go to sleep. I mean, I was always told, don't go to sleep at past 8 o'clock, or that even that was late as a kid. And probably that is whenever they get older and they have school and they have schedules like that. But as a baby, I think it's cool that you can have those later nights. And
you can. And there are some families, I worked a lot of years in homes, and some families have different schedules. Like when you think, we have a lot of manufacturing plants around, and we have some parents that work late shifts. Maybe they get home at midnight. They're in an alternative schedule. They're not on the daytime schedule. And it's perfectly fine to align your child's schedule with your family's schedule. As long as you're not changing, as long as that rhythm is the same for them, it really is okay. I mean, families do different things just so they can spend time with their babies and their children. So.
Yeah. It's really good to hear from you just how you can really make it so flexible as a mom whenever you hear all of these rigid things that you're supposed to do. And in my mind, I was like, my kid has to go to bed at 7 o'clock or we have to be eating dinner at 5 o'clock. And, that's whenever I would get home from work. And
right.
So it's just like you don't have to be as rigid. And that's very freeing as a mom whenever you think about, especially a working mom. That's very freeing to hear from you.
And there are some babies that have their days and nights confused, and maybe a family's on the daytime schedule, but the baby's really on the nighttime schedule. That's a challenge. Yeah. But there are things you can do to help facilitate that. You want to make sure, we always call it day-night cycling in the NICU, because, when babies are in the NICU, they're usually in a hospital setting where there's bright lights and it's artificial lighting. It's not like a lot of homes have natural light coming in, or you feel that day-night cycling, but in a hospital, it's harder to create that. Now, I think they have a lot better lighting options that allow for that. But when it's nighttime, trying to keep the stimulation really low and, keeping lights down as much as possible. But, in a NICU environment, a nurse has to actually see where the needle goes or where the procedure that they're doing, they have to see. So they need light. And so they do use little masks. If you've seen those, they'll use masks to keep the baby masked, to keep the light out. So it's not as obnoxious to their system. And so they have little blinders on sometimes, and especially the babies under the Billy lights, or not getting all that light into their eyes, that's kind of a neat thing. But day-night cycling is a real thing, like keeping windows open and blinds up and the light coming in during the day, so it's daytime, and then at night, when your baby does wake, just maybe keeping a soft lamp on or a night light, or keeping everything low and talking low and slow and not having a lot of stimulation. That's really good too.
That's awesome. I kind of want to go back to the swings and the bouncers and all of that, because I have been working. I work at Marshall Pediatric Therapy, and I'm just like learning from all the therapists. I'm the marketing coordinator, so I just like walk in and I don't know really what's going on, but they teach me so much. But one of the big things that I heard from day one was the tummy time. Don't have the containers that you should put them, or that you should not put them in. And another thing, I didn't hear it from here, but just that is circling around in social media world, is swaddling is not, they tell you not to swaddle. That is but I've always grown up like, you always swaddle the baby. You make them feel like they're in the womb. And but could you just talk about
what is the reason that you've heard for not swaddling a newborn?
Their reflex, like that, and I've always heard the opposite. The reason that you do swaddle is so they don't have the wake reflex.
I think there is some confusion maybe on this, a lot of confusion. A newborn does have a lot of reflexes. They move the way God designed babies. They move reflexively. They don't have control over movement when they're first born. It's reflexive. And so there's a reflex called asymmetrical tonic neck reflex. And that's when a baby like looks to the left, they'll get in a fencer position. It looks like flexed on one side and extended on another. And then they turn the head the other way and they do it that way. And so you can see some of these reflexes. Some of them you don't know. The startle, everyone knows, right? Because you see your baby, startle, and there's a Moro reflex. And when babies are on their back, that's when they usually experience, when that head is tilted, it'll elicit that reflex, and they'll startle and wake up. Babies, we're in the womb all nice and flexed up. Babies that are born early didn't get that crunched flexion. So definitely premature babies really need to be swaddled and in that flexion. And I think, it is so individual. Again, if your baby is startling multiple times per night and they're newborn and they're young, I would try to swaddle them. But the important thing is, I don't know why anyone ever thinks it's a good idea to swaddle their arms straight down. That's a bad idea. Babies self-soothe with their hands to their mouth and hands to their face. That's a good thing. So you want to swaddle them with their arms and their hands in midline so they can get to their face and their hands are right here. Yeah. But again, that's going to be one of those personal preferences again, that swaddling is not bad. And later, no, you don't want to swaddle, past that newborn couple months. You don't want to swaddle because they're beginning to learn how to move, and rolling comes into play 3-4 months. They're getting ready to roll. They typically go tummy to back quicker, but you won't see that unless you're spending time on your tummy, unless you're tummy timing it. Back to tummy is a harder position to roll in.
Yeah.
So
interesting. There's so many different swaddles out there too. There's the one that is kind of shaped like they have wings and they're up here, and there's just different ones. But yeah, there are so many different opinions out there about swaddling, and I'm kind of being thrown in the middle of that. I was actually looking at stuff last night, so I was like, what should I do?
And those are some of the decisions you make as you get to know your baby. Mm-hmm. Because you may be having this big discussion about swaddling, and maybe your baby's not going to like it. Mm, and so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe your baby's going to love it, and you'll go, oh, this is okay to do. They really like it. So I would just really take some cues, too, from your baby and from your healthcare providers. You know, your healthcare providers are also, you can ask those questions to them in the journey.
Awesome. Well, I guess going into that, I feel like as a new mom, a lot of the stressors are about kind of what we've been talking about this whole time. Just like, what do you put on the registry? What are the things that they need for their development? The must-haves. What are some non-negotiables that I should have on the registry? Mm-hmm. And then, what are the things that you're like, could do without, you could buy later?
Well, I definitely think less is better. It's interesting that you don't have a baby store to walk into anymore. There used to be these giant baby stores, and expecting moms would walk in and just their eyes would get buggy, like, what in the world? And because it made you feel like you had to get all this stuff, and you really don't. Babies need so very little early on, even though our registries are long and we think we need a lot. Less is definitely better, and you never wear a high volume of clothes, the clothes you think, I definitely think following the recommendation, having onesies, having gowns are always good in the beginning. So you're not sitting there snap, 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 or a quick zipper is better because you change baby's diaper a lot in the beginning. So many diaper changes, many diaper changes. So the ease of getting to the diaper quickly and not spending a lot of time snapping is helpful. Also, one pieces are the most helpful for newborns because, 2 pieces, it ride up on them and it's just not comfortable. So anything one piece is better. And less is better, just they need a little place to sleep that's safe, that they're not going to have any barriers in, and that close proximity to you if you're breastfeeding, and also safe that you can get them in that bassinet when you're sleepy, that you can get them in their sleeping separate bed, so they're not sleeping with you. It is nice to nurse in sideline. That was always one of my favorite positions, especially nighttime. But getting that baby back in bed is really important. And then, just simple, depending on the season, if it's and your house temperature, whether you're going to, if you keep it really cold, like in our house, I live with an Arctic polar bear, and and it's an Arctic temperature. So you'd want to keep the baby dressed. But, if you're a person who doesn't like a lot of air conditioning and it's summertime, your baby's born in the summer, they might need less clothes, or a little like you, like don't overdress them. I have seen some families, some cultures believe it should be really hot or warm or in the 80s in the house. Once they have the kid in like a sweater and long pants, and you're just going, this is too hot, too hot. The baby's just sweating and their head is wet, and that's not great. So you want to just, dress them appropriately. And you do need things like a thermometer, something to suck their nose out if they're congested, or to get the congestion out. Making sure you have good diaper care. My favorite is Aquaphor and Maalox. This was a little secret that we used at Children's Hospital, and it worked like a charm. I had kids whose little bottoms could get really, really red just quickly overnight. So slathering that up, the Aquaphor and Maalox, was just healed, such a healing ointment. And for those of you who are curious about it, Aquaphor, you can buy it in anywhere, any Walmart, Target, any drugstore. And I would buy like the pot, the big container of it, and buy just cheap liquid Maalox. And I always bought cherry flavor because it smelled so good. And you just mix it 1-to-1, meaning if it's a half a cup, or a cup, whatever amount you want to mix, and you use a blender, you can use, or not a blender, a hand mixer. You can use a big mixer too. And you literally just keep mixing it till it gets all fluffy and creamy. And then you put it back in a container, and you can get little containers for your diaper bag or wherever you go. And it works like magic, healing the skin.
That is awesome. Well, I feel like I've been gifted with a wealth of your knowledge. Do you have any closing encouragement for moms out there, new moms, or maybe moms who are in the trenches of newborn life?
I do. You know, you can do it. There's nothing that you're going to do that is wrong. I'm confident you will have the right mom intuition to guide you through the right choice for you and for your baby. And there is a lot of information out there, but you take a deep breath and you choose the thing that feels the most right to you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, it was great to hear from you, to ask all my burning questions.
Thanks for switching roles today.
Yeah, it was so fun.
It was.
So fun. And can't wait to welcome baby girl in and bring her and get all the baby cuddles.
It's going to be fun to see you as a mom. You're going to be a great mom.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited.
Thanks so much for listening to Help, I Have Kids. If you're tuning into this podcast, that means you're a mom who's curious, committed, and ready to learn. And we see you. We'd love for you to join our Help, I Have Kids Facebook community, where moms just like you are connecting, asking questions, and encouraging each other every day. It's a space for real conversations, expert insight, and support from moms who get it, because we're all in this together. And if you know a mom who's feeling unsure or maybe overwhelmed, or just needs to be reminded that she can do it, she can advocate for her child with confidence, share this episode with her. We're building a village here, and we're glad you're a part of it.